What is your go-to, never-fail joke? Part 1. Do you have a great joke that always gets a laugh? Share it in the comments. I want to die quietly in my sleep like my granddad, not screaming in terror like his passengers. A woman is sitting at her recently deceased husband's funeral. A man leans into her and asks, "Do you mind if I say a word?" "No, go right ahead," the woman replies. The man stands, clears his throat, says plethora, and sits back down. "Thanks," the woman says, "that means a lot." Outside of a dog, a book is a man's best friend. Inside of a dog it's too dark to read. What's the difference between a hippo and a zippo? One's really heavy and the other's a little lighter. A bunch of sailors on a boat want to have a smoke, but don't have any matches. So one sailor throws one of his cigarettes overboard, and the whole boat becomes a cigarette lighter. My dog is a rescue, which is a really self-righteous way of saying I bought a used dog. A cop pulls over a car with two priests. The cop makes his way up to the window and says, "We're looking for two child molesters." The priests look at each other for a moment and turn back to the cop. "We'll do it." An old religious woman goes to a pet store to buy a parrot. Everything is fine until she brings it home. It begins to swear uncontrollably. F this, F that, F you, and finally the lady can stand it no more. She grabs the bird, shoves it in the freezer, and slams the door shut. Squawking, shrieking, pounding, and cursing come out of the freezer for a few moments and then it goes quiet. The woman is scared that she has hurt the bird and opens the freezer. The parrot walks calmly out and steps gently onto the woman's outstretched hand. He looks into the lady's eyes and says, "Ma'am, I am truly sorry if my language offended you and it will not recur. If I may ask, what did the chicken do?" A vacationing penguin is driving his car through Arizona when he notices that the oil pressure light is on. He gets out to look and sees oil dripping out of the motor. He drives to the nearest town and stops at the first gas station. After dropping the car off, the penguin goes for a walk around town. He sees an ice cream shop and, being a penguin in Arizona, decides that something cold would really hit the spot. He gets a big dish of ice cream and sits down to eat. Having no hands, he makes a real mess trying to eat with his flippers. After finishing his ice cream, he goes back to the gas station and asks the mechanic if he's found the problem. The mechanic looks up and says, "It looks like you blew a seal." "No, the penguin replies, "it's just ice cream." A guy is in a doctor's office. His doctor is there with him. "I have two pieces of bad news," the doctor says. "What are they?" "Well, the first piece of news is that you have cancer." "What's the second piece of news?" he asks. "Well, the second piece of bad news is that you have Alzheimer's." The man laughs and says, "Well, at least I don't have cancer." Two hobos were walking down the tracks. They encounter a mangy old dog sitting in the middle of the tracks, contorted into that weird position and licking his nuts. One hobo says wistfully, "Gee, I wish could do that." His companion replies, "Well, maybe you should start by petting him first." What do you get when you cross a mosquito with a mountain climber? Nothing. You can't cross a vector and a scalar. My dad asked me the other day, "Are you even listening to me?" which is a really weird way to start a conversation if you ask me. Patty and Mick worked together in St. John's and both were laid off, so they went to the unemployment office. When asked his occupation, Patty answered, "Panty stitcher. I sewed the elastic onto ladies' cotton panties and thongs." The clerk looked up panty stitcher on his computer and finding it classified as unskilled labor, he gave him $80 a week unemployment pay. Mick was next and when asked his occupation replied, "Diesel fitter." Since diesel fitter was a skilled job, the clerk gave Mick $160 a week. When Patty found out, he was furious. He stormed back into the office to find out why his friend and coworker was collecting double his pay. The clerk explained, "Panty stitchers are unskilled and diesel fitters are skilled labor." "What skill?" yelled Patty. "I sewed the elastic on the panties and the thongs." Mick puts them over his head and says, "Yep, diesel fitter." People tell me I'm condescending. That means I talk down to people. What do you call a snobbish criminal walking down the stairs? A condescending. I was walking past a prison the other day, and I saw a dwarf in an orange jumpsuit shimmying down the side of the building. I thought to myself, now that's a little condescending. Me, I've lost my calculator, and me, oh, I've got nothing to add, this only counts as never fail depending on your definition of never fail. I arranged a threesome on the weekend. Had 2 no-shows, but I still had fun. A threesome? If I wanted to disappoint 2 people at once, I'd have dinner with my parents. You know Orion's belt? Waste of space. I know, not a very good joke. 3 stars. Never tell a pun to a kleptomaniac. They're always taking things literally. I'm stealing this. So 2 cows are talking in a field. The first cow says, "Hey man, you worried about this mad cow disease that is going around?" The second cow says, "I am sure glad it doesn't affect us helicopters." 2 nuns go driving between convents. They're driving through the country when a vampire jumps onto the hood. The passenger nun says, "Quick. Show him your cross." The other nun says, "Get the F off my car." There are 3 old ladies sitting on a park bench. A man in a trench coat walks by and flashes them. 2 of the old ladies have a stroke. The other one couldn't reach that far. 3 guys are walking through the woods when they find a lamp. One of them picks it up, rubs it, and out pops a genie. It booms, "You have finally freed me after all these years, so I'll grant each one of you 3 wishes." The first guy immediately blurts out, "I want $1 billion, poof." He's holding a printout that shows his account balance is now in fact $1,003,50. The second man thinks for a bit, then says, "I want to be the richest man alive, poof." He's holding papers showing his net worth is now well over $100 billion. The third guy thinks even longer about his wish, then says, "I want my left arm to rotate clockwise for the rest of my life, poof." His arm starts rotating. The genie tells them it's time for their second wish. First guy says, "I want to be married to the most beautiful woman on earth, poof." A stunning beauty wraps herself around his arm. Second guy says, "I want to be good looking and charismatic, so I can have every girl I want, poof." His looks change and the first guy's wife immediately starts flirting with him. Third guy says, "I want my right arm to rotate counter-clockwise until I die, poof." Now both his arms are rotating, in opposite directions. The genie tells them to think very carefully about their third wish. First guy does, and after a while says, "I never want to become sick or injured, I want to stay healthy until I die, poof." His complexion improves, his acne is gone and his knees don't bother him anymore. Second guy says, "I never want to grow old. I want to stay 29 forever, poof." He looks younger already. Third guy smiles triumphantly and says, "My last wish is for my head to nod back and forth, poof." He's now nodding his head and still flailing his arms around. The genie wishes them good luck, disappears, and the men soon go their separate ways. Many years later they meet again and chat about how things have been going. First guy is ecstatic, "I've invested the money and multiplied it many times over, so me and my family will be among the richest of the rich pretty much forever. My wife is a freak in the sheets, and I've never gotten so much as a cold in all these years." Second guy smiles and says, "Well, I built charities worldwide with a fraction of my wealth. I'm still the richest guy alive and also revered for my good deeds. I haven't aged a day since we last met, and yes, your wife is pretty wild in bed." Third guy walks in, flailing his arms around and nodding his head, and says, "Guys, I think I effed up." A man on vacation with his family arrives at a hotel. As he's checking in, he says to the clerk, "I'm on vacation with my family. Please make sure the porn channel is disabled." The clerk replies in disgust, "It's just regular porn, you sick freak." I've heard this the other way around. As the man arrives to the hotel with his wife and kids waiting in the lobby, the clerk asks, "Would you like the porn channel on your room to be disabled, sir?" To which the man replies in disgust, "No, just regular porn, you sick freak." You've heard of Murphy's Law, right? It says that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But have you heard of Cole's Law? It's thinly sliced cabbage. I always start laughing halfway through the joke though, so usually the delivery isn't that good. What do you get when you cross a joke with a rhetorical question? There are 2 kinds of people in the world, those who need closure. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And please leave feedback, suggestions, and stories in the comments.